Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon and greetings. Thank you all so much for joining us, wherever you may be, those of us here in the United States, and those that are on other areas of the country and also areas globally. Thank you so much for staying with us. You have taken the time to join a WEC, Women in Ethics and Global Compliance event. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Gina Green, and I happen to be the vice chair of the organization. And what we strive to do is to provide a safe space and a place where that are in the compliance and ethics field, where they can come and they can learn, they can network, they can hanker in and learn their skills a little bit tighter and better. Today, we happen to have some terrific speakers with us. The first speaker, because we have two segments today, the first speaker is calling in and she's with us and she's all the way in the UK, and her name is Anima Kosai. Some of you may already know her. So let me tell you a little bit more about her if you don't. Anima Kosai is Malaysian British with 23 years of experience as a practicing lawyer in Malaysia. In Malaysia, she was doing corporate counseling for an oil and gas industry. She was general counsel as well, and she decided to join a joint venture and take on a bigger role, and she became on a larger platform. In 2021, Anima formed the Speak Up Collective. This is a global online community committed to co-creating safe, healthy, and inclusive workspaces, and she advises organizations on safe speak up cultures. Anima writes extensively and has given talks to the media and corporations related to speaking up at work. She covers harassment, safety, business ethics, bribery, corruption, and of course, empowering women. Let's welcome Anima and let her get a chance to talk.
Hi, Gina. Thank you so much for inviting me. And I'm really excited to be with all of you today. And I see some familiar names, so it's wonderful. And I'm so glad you've created this safe space for people in ethics and compliance to be able to have candid conversations. And I think I'm a big believer of that we feel safe to talk about some of our issues that we don't want people outside to be able to judge us or remark upon. So thanks. Shall we just get started and put the slides up?
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again. She has presented us with a PowerPoint demonstration. So we're going to give her a chance to get that settled, and then we'll be ready to show slide one.
Great, thank you. I love the fact that you've called this When Do I Yell? Because my entire platform is called Speak Up. And it's really about people in the workplace speaking up on things that matter. And among that is, unethical conduct, like, fraud or corruption, other violations and all that. But the other things I look at as well are things like sexual harassment and bullying and safety issues as well. But for today, let's focus on this. And so when I say, when do I yell? I mean, for a long time, I've been looking at people helping them speak up at work. But one of the things I realized, there was a little bit of danger in that, because it's risky when you speak up. If you're in an organization that does not value speaking up. And unfortunately, I think we all know the majority of companies, workplaces in the world today still haven't quite reached that essence of psychological safety. And that's really what I want to talk about today, because I'm sure a number of you may be in organizations that are still on the learning curve. And one of the reasons why I'm talking today is I want to help you get there, right? Especially in your role as in ethics and compliance. So let's move to the next slide. Yeah.
And I agree with you, Anima. That's such a big point today, because so many companies say they have a whistleblower program or an ethics hotline, but yet, are we safe to use them? Do we feel safe to use them? Can we use them? So thank you for
Absolutely.
bringing it to our attention.
So actually, one of the things I want to say, when people want to yell, whether it's
Mm,
you or somebody else in your organization, what are they yelling about? What are they speaking up about? And if we look at the risks that a lot of organizations focus on, especially in your roles, right? I mean, we look at perhaps a little further down there, we look at fraud, bribery, legal violations, sanctions, all these sort of things. That's what you're looking at. But if we're now, when we tune into what's going on in the news and social media, what are people talking about? And actually, the number one thing I get approached on nowadays, and I never even set out to do this, is actually diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it's done from the angle of when something's harassing or harmful. How do people speak up? How do people intervene? So there's a lot of conversation around that, as well as sexual harassment, and toxic workplace is sort of parcel of that. And I'll talk a little bit about that. But these are the things that people want to talk about. These are the things that people want to come to you with. So, I remember in your explanation of, how as officers, compliant people in compliance and ethics, how do you educate people to recognize the risks? Actually, a lot of them already know the risks, they see it, and you're relying on them to tell you. So these are people who are your ears and eyes on the ground, who come forward to you in compliance and tell you, hey, we've got a problem here. So really, I mean, the question is, if we just move to the next slide. Okay, so what you have is actually people who are, can we have the next? Yeah, people who, these are the people who want to be noticed. They're trying to tell you, hey, Houston, we have a problem. Me, pick me. And either, the management, or maybe yourself, you're behaving like Professor Snape and going, okay, no, that person's a nuisance. I don't want to hear them anymore. Or they're women, women have less to say. I mean, there's a reason why now Hermione Granger, that photo is being used a lot, because women are heard less than men. And I know this is why you've set up this group, Gina, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Anyway, putting that aside, a lot of people are in your organization are trying to get your attention, but they may not be doing it in the formal channels or the ones that you think you've set up for them. And there are loads of reasons for that. And this is really where we want to look at when people are trying to raise their hand, or they're not raising their hand, but they want you to know what's going on. So let's just move to the next slide. So it's really about people wanting to yell to me. So the question you need to be asking, especially in your roles, is, do people feel safe to tell me? Do people feel I'm approachable and they can tell me? Do people feel they can trust me? So I'd love for you to actually write this question down, and maybe just ask yourselves every day, in my role in ethics, compliance, or whatever particular role you're having, do people feel safe to tell me of problems, of things they've seen or heard? And a lot of times they're unsure about, I mean, many of us have been in investigations, and we look at it and then we go, well, why didn't you report this earlier? And it could be that they weren't sure. They needed someone to go to, and you do want that to be you. You don't want it to be Twitter or the New York Times, right? You want it to be you. So this is the question you need to be asking. Do people feel safe to tell me? Do people feel safe to tell my team? Do people feel safe to tell, other the board, other people who should be receiving these reports, right? So next slide.
That's really important.
So this I wanted to show, so this is the EY Global Integrity Report 2020. And I read the report every year, and I always find it absolutely fascinating. Now, one of the things, if you just look at the white bit on the right-hand side, senior management is more likely to act unethically. Now, I think this doesn't come as a big surprise to many of us, right? But also be aware that this doesn't come as a big surprise to most people in the workplace, right? So if they're already, and this is confessions by senior management themselves. If you just look at this, you have all respondents, you have senior management, and you have board members, and you see how the percentages increase with each question, right? Do you ignore unethical conduct in your team? Have you ever misled or would you mislead external parties such as auditors, regulators? I'm not sure how they phrase the question for people to answer so honestly in this way. But look at that. That's this, the more senior they are, the more likely they are to make unethical decisions. And we can have a whole other conversation as to why this is the case, right? The pressure, the environment, all kinds of other factors, power dynamics come into play as well, right? But this is basically the findings of EY when they did their survey back in 2020. And then if we look just to where it says 1 and 4, so I've just taken extracts from some of the report. But one of the things that I found very worrying is that 58%, only 58% of junior employees feel confident that they come forward without fear of any consequences. So basically you've got let me do with the maths, 42% who won't come forward, right? They're afraid. Whether it's true or not, it's a perception, but a perception means they're not going to come forward and tell you things. 70%, however, shows that the board think they will. So you can see this disconnect between the senior level and the junior level. The senior level think everything's a-okay, and really what's happening at the junior level, it's not quite there. And the other thing is, if you look at number 4 there, both, about 34% believe that high performers are allowed to get away with unethical behavior. So if you're a prima donna, if you're seen as valuable to the organization, you're the one bringing in the money or celebrity of some sort, you're more likely to get away with it. And if there's a problem that is implicating this person, people are less likely to come forward and report it, right? So these, yeah, and so in our role, we need to be aware of this and look out for red flags and see certain personalities, if they're doing record sales and all that. I think in compliance, we already know that could be a problem, but it's about keeping an eye on, where people are doing really well despite impossible targets. We also know that's a red flag, but also at senior level, they may be seeing this person as well. She is bringing in all the money, so leave them alone. So I think that's really the perception that we need to be looking out for. So people are less likely to yell at you or yell to you. It's report to you that there's a problem there. So just go to the next slide. So this is what I love talking about, and I've talked about this for the past few years in various presentations and talks for organizations as well. I'm just showing you here. This is a snapshot of a session I had with a bunch of compliance people within our own platform back in June, where we asked the question: is there a link between workplace bullying and fraud and corruption? And to cut a long story short, we were on for about 90 minutes. It was a very frank discussion, and people from actually 5 continents, amazingly, in this call. And the conclusion was pretty much unanimous. Yes, there is a link, because when you have bullying, when you have a toxic workplace, people are more fearful of bringing up issues. They do not have that element of psychological safety. So if you're, and when I say toxic workplace, it doesn't mean the entire company necessarily has a problem. Sometimes it's certain departments, certain locations, under a certain manager, there may be more issues there. So that's something to look out for. And on the right-hand side of the column, I just wanted to show you some statistics, just in terms of, let's say, bullying, right? This shows the percentage of people in the workplace, so throughout their career, who have experienced bullying. In the US, according to the Workplace Bullying Institute, 30%. In the UK, the Trade Union Congress, about the same, 29%. And according to the International Bar Association, 50% of women lawyers and 33% of men. Right? That's fairly high. And if we just go to sexual harassment, you'll see the figures are even higher, specifically among women. Actually, the figure goes up if it's LGBT people as well, that it's even higher than women. But what I really want to show you here is the percentage that don't report. And these are the ones that should be coming to you or coming to HR, coming to management. When it comes to bullying, Just under 60% of them people keep quiet about it. And it's even worse for sexual harassment. Only 25% report, which means 3 in 4 people do not come forward then when they're sexually harassed. And these are figures from the International Bar Association in their 2019 report. The International Bar Association. These are lawyers. So if you can imagine lawyers not reporting, can you imagine what it's like in other professions, right? In other disciplines. So it could even be worse. And I think it depends on the industry. In the UK, back to the Trade Union Congress, they saw that 80% of women have been sexually harassed in the workplace. So, but what I really want to show here is the fact that people are not reporting. So we saw around a 50% of people may not come forward when it comes to issues like fraud and so on. And it's even far higher when it comes to personal harm. At the moment, I tried looking for racial harassment because there's a lot of that in the news, but because it's been fairly recent, there aren't really as many statistics compared to, let's say, sexual harassment. But the thing is, the other thing is people, when they see something that they don't agree with or they're unhappy with and they feel they can't report, they tend to leave. So that's a red flag as well, the attrition rate.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so basically, toxic workplaces is something to really think about. And you know where you're working, you know what it's like as well. So just go to next slide. Okay, so this is a pyramid I sort of put together, but really what we want to be asking is that if you look at the tip of it, these are the reports that come to you, right? Right at the tip are the ones that you can resolve. And of course, there are those that you can't. Either you lack evidence, but sometimes there are other factors that come into play. And I don't know how many people, I've experienced it myself, the immense pressure of not continuing an investigation or having some form of interference or being told, oh, you know, that person, no way, you know, they're not like that. So, you know, there tends to be a bit of that. And sometimes it's even unspoken. So in compliance, you might feel, okay, put a report together, there's not really enough evidence, so it doesn't get resolved, but you do know about it, right? But if you look under the second line, these are things you don't even know. And we'll ignore the one right at the bottom, unknown to anyone in the organization. You're really interested, right? Because if you look at this, the significant opportunity to reduce risks is a huge chunk, most of which you don't know about because no one came to you with it, right? And sometimes the reason they don't come to you is not because they don't want to report it. They tell someone, they may tell their boss, but their boss doesn't escalate it. So it stops. And I think you're probably familiar with times when it stops at middle management and it doesn't go up higher. And sometimes the reason that it stops at middle management, it's not some kind of really dark, complicit reason, but it could be that either they're embarrassed, they don't want to show they're incompetent, right? They don't want to own up to a mistake, or it may affect their goals and their targets. It might set them back in terms of time or cost or resources. So it's like, oh, we'll just let that go, especially if the issue is about someone who's bringing in good money for the department. So it's like, so the person in the middle may not raise it to you, so you don't know about it. Or sometimes it's a safety issue and they think, oh, it's going to cost too much to maintain, so we'll just let it go, and then something else goes wrong, right? So it doesn't necessarily come up to you because it's being filtered out at a lower level. And I think, I'm sure a lot of people have seen this and experienced this, especially when they've done investigations after the fact. So let's just go to the next slide. So as you can see, you actually have this great opportunity to sort of switch your torch on, shine the light there into the darkness, right? Things that have been hidden, things that don't come up necessarily. And the question is, how do you do that? What do you have to do? And the secret really is looking back at the channels that you have today and asking that question: how safe is it for people to come to report to me? And so basically, your people need to know how to report wrongdoing. And I think a lot of you probably have that, you have your education, your training sessions, but there's also issues of accessibility, language, and who you're trying to bring in, especially if it's suppliers and people outside the organization. That's a little bit trickier, right? But
Third-party vendors, absolutely, yes.
Right. Especially if they're in other countries, they don't speak English. So that's another conversation altogether, right? But also, that they trust you. So they trust that when they report to you, it's going to stay with you. There's not going to be any leaks. Their bosses are not going to find out, right? And there's going to be no retaliation as well. And the other thing is that they believe that you will act on it. You're not just going to let it go into a black hole because you yourself are afraid, or there's interference. So just going to the next slide.
And I think that's a really big part too, Anima, why a lot of people don't speak up, because they're afraid what you just said, it's going to be written down, it'll be documented, but then nothing will happen. And of course, they fear retaliation at some form or fashion might whip her back around. So very interesting on that.
Absolutely. And so this is the thing, one of the things, I've got this and it's like, okay, this might look like a checklist. I hate compliance checklists. I'm going to just tell you that. I mean, I know we all have them. It's a necessary evil, and it's good to have it to show that, yes, we have all this in place, but you have to go deeper. So while I put all this here, having several types of reporting channels, that's accessible for the different people, that it's human based. So I think this is what we miss out, that second point. It is human centric. It's sensitized based on gender, right? It's sensitized based on race. It's sensitized based on language and culture, and it's trauma informed. Because the other thing is, in compliance, we don't get trained in how to deal with people who are in some way traumatized. So you can't ask a whole list of questions without them feeling, shutting down. You want them to be completely open and speak to you. And well, yeah, clear no retaliation policies, and also the ability that you're able to act independently. But next slide. Now that sounds like a lot, right? And so this is one of the things I want to say. Can we just move to the next slide? Yeah. So forget everything I just told. Oh, sorry, just do one thing, right? Just do one thing. And that is, okay, the next slide, is to listen. So listen when someone comes forward to you, even if they hesitate and they stand at the door. And when they're speaking to you, right, it could be like they are watching the micro expressions on your face. Like they want to tell you something and they're going to censor it. They're going to filter it depending on how you behave. If you react and go, what? Who said that? They're going to shut down. If you go, oh, thank you for telling me, tell me more, and be really open, then you build that safety. They're more likely to tell you more. And that's what you need to know, right? You need to hear, you need to let them just speak. Don't worry about getting everything down at that point. Just let them open up, and right, and listen with empathy. None of this, well, why didn't you do that? Why? No, that's judging, and they start shutting down because they feel you're blaming them. So yeah, don't interrupt, but just listen. But the other thing is also listen, not just to what is said, but what is unsaid, right? What they're not telling you. And you can, I think we're all human beings. We know how to interact with people. Use those communication skills when people come to your office or have a Zoom call and open up and want to say something. So, and I believe we can all do it. I think sometimes we're so saddled with having to get everything down with all these checklists, all the do's and don'ts. We kind of lose a little bit of that human touch. And this is what I really want us to come back to, which is our ability to be observant, sense into what's going on, and to really listen. And everything else will fit into place. So I'll stop there. I have a lot more to say, but I'm so conscious of time as well. And if there are any questions, yeah.
Well, I so appreciate you spending some time with us this afternoon, Anima. You made some very valuable points, and I'm sure all of us can take away great points that you made. For me, the takeaway for today for me is to be an effective listener, because a lot of times we do that. When something is brought to us as investigators, we want to start writing down to take down as much we can right away. We pull out our pen, our paper, start typing. But as you said, let's stop for a minute and bring back the thought of being human, the thought of showing humanity to someone and empathy, and listen, be a good listener first. And you know what? You'll be surprised how much you retain for later when you do bring out the pen and paper. It works. Thank you again so much. Do
Thank
we
you.
happen to have a chance? We can go ahead and look at just the screen that shows how to communicate. If you would like to reach out to Amina, and Anima, and she's available. She has a terrific
I
organization and a
think it
website.
was it that last slide? I remember I forgot to focus on the
Yeah,
last slide, which shows it. So you can
I-
share that. Yeah. But okay, Kate's put it
yeah,
down there. Just
great.
check. We have these conversations all the time on different issues, but and one of our focus in September is listening, just as
Mm,
I said. Not just for
yeah,
people in compliance, any role in the organization. Yeah.
thank you. So there's her screen. Thank you for sharing it. That's it again with her website. And of course, if you go back to WEC's website, you can also find her there. And because she is a member, we appreciate her. And today is a dual day. So we're going to just put Anima on pause for a second. And we're going to
Thank
switch
you.
over. And we're still talking about time to yell. Thank you again, Anima. We're going to still talk about when is it time to yell? When do we raise our voices in this whole situation? And for our second segment today, we do have two speakers. We're going to talk to them. The first one is Lisa Beth Latini Walker. You might know Lisa Beth. And then her co-writer, their authors, by the way. The co-writer is Steph Cheetah. And the name of the book that they have created and produced is called Raise the Game, Not Your Voice. The terrific thing about this book, it will be available on September the 11th, I believe the date is, and that it'll be available for all to purchase and to download. So, Lisa Beth, are you with me?
I am.
Hi.
It's nice to see you.
It's good to see you too today. Thank you so much for joining. Is Steph able to be with us as well?
I see Steph there too. I think she needs to unmute and turn on her camera, but she is here with us as well.
Excellent. While she's getting in there, I'll go ahead and take the liberty and share with you guys the bios for these terrific ladies, because we want to make sure everybody knows your background. Just give me 1 second with that.
Yes, and I will tell you, the book is going to be available on September 13th, which is a Monday.
Oh, okay.
And I see Steph.
Great.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Steph. Thanks so much for joining us. I just have to, I was trying to slide that screen over, but anyhow, let's see. Okay, so Lisa Beth Latini Walker is a seasoned compliance professional and an attorney qualified in New York, New Jersey, DC, and Minnesota. Lisa Beth has worked with leading global organizations to successfully launch, lead, and support compliance programs in an evolving world with risk management is no longer enough. Along the way, she learned the importance of cultivating strong relationships and the power of great communication to connect people to the organization's vision. We welcome you again, Lisa Beth. And then we have Steph with us. Steph Cheetah spent 15 years working in all aspects of corporate communications before starting her own communications consultancy. She has supported some of the biggest organizations in some of the most highly regulated industries. But today, Steph finds she's most passionate about helping small and mid-sized companies clearly communicate to those who matter most to their successes. So we welcome you as well, Steph. So this is exciting, ladies. We have you both here right on the brink of a new book that you have put out. And we kind of want to know a little bit more about it and first of all, what made you even decide to write a book?
Well, it's so funny. So the picture that we have of us together as authors actually predates this whole pandemic and everything else. So Steph and I met a long time ago, almost a decade ago. And we were both working for a global travel management company called CWT, Carlson Wagonly Travel. And we instantly kind of clicked, and our styles worked really well together to bring forth stories and help change behavior together. She has so many tools in her toolkit in terms of how to communicate best with people, and bringing together that magic of communications and compliance really helped us to be a powerhouse, especially when we really needed it in times of crisis. So we have this picture because when we both decided to, start on the entrepreneurial journey, we talked to each other and we're like, we need to write a book about what we've done together, because there's power in being able to really, really work in a harmonious fashion across multiple industries, across multiple areas of expertise. And so we had this picture taken saying we were going to write a book, and then we did.
Nice. Yeah, you mentioned something there that caught my attention. Lisa Beth, you said compliance and communication, but for some, they seem to think that speaking or communicating what's going on, they're being compliant. So can you tell us, while we're here, is that in fact true, that communication and compliance are the same, or are they different?
Oh my gosh. Well, first, I would turn it over to Steph to say, is communicating like a one-way street? I don't think so.
Absolutely not.
I think you can say all the right things and
Yeah.
do some of the right things, but if the way you're communicating about it doesn't inspire others to kind of follow you and follow the behavior changes that you're looking for, it's really, talk is cheap at the end of the day, right? You can say lots of things. If you don't mean them, if you don't follow through, if you don't inspire others to follow through as well, it just doesn't have impact. So when we talk about communicating, we're really talking about that deeper level of integrating into behavior change, because, right, I can say something to you, but if you're not listening, it's not going to have an impact. If you're, filled with doubts and not really in line with the message you're receiving, you're not going to follow through. You're going to do everything to avoid running into trouble. You're going to do everything to avoid having more problems, but then that stops. And so when we talk about, the power of communicating, listening, storytelling, that's getting to that deeper understanding that goes beyond just, can you say the right things when you're asked to?
And that's so important for so many levels, whether you are new in your career, whether you're mid-sized or midpoint in your career, or you just changing careers. It's so important.
Absolutely. And so I was thrilled when Steph said that she would write the book with me, because, right, my background is really, I'm a lawyer. I've been working in compliance and ethics. Steph's the expert when it comes to really understanding audiences, landing messages, all of the kind of dynamics behind that. And Steph, I would love you to chat for just a little bit about what it's like working with compliance professionals when it's good and when it's bad.
Yes, that's one of the reasons I was so excited to write this book, because I think most of us would not tend to think of compliance and legal folks being cut from the same cloth as communications. Those can sometimes be sort of adversarial relationships within organizations. And, we sort of broke that model in what we were able to do together. And I think it's just, and the tips that we offer in the book are all about partnering well. And that could be honestly any function with communications. In this case, we're talking specifically in that compliance space, but it's about sort of understanding each other's goals and how you meet in the middle, and also at the end of the day, a big message in our book is it's about the audience and their goals. We're both the communicator and the compliance professional trying to communicate something and get something through to the end user. And the truth is their goals and what they care about can sometimes be different than what we're trying to do. And so how do you really put on that hat where you think about them and what they need? And we even work you through, like, sometimes that won't perfectly line up. And what do you do in those cases? And the shortcut answer there, kind of to spoil the headline, is, you know, you try to really bend toward what they need, because otherwise you're just checking a box, thinking you communicated, but it's not getting through, it's not being heard. So you haven't really accomplished your goal at the end of the day.
And can I just interject into and bring out a point that you made, which I'd like to, Steph, because so many times when, and this is just what you see every day, I think you bring it out as well. The term communicating, can you communicate well, is often said on applications, it's said in interviews, and we take it for granted. Most of us say, sure, yeah, what do you mean? Yeah, that's a given. You know, some of us even might think they might be trying to ask, is that our first language? That, you know, they're asking about our communication skills, or maybe is it their writing skills? But we take it as oh, this is something I can do. But I think you highlighted that it's not necessarily that easy, that sometimes our communication is not being impactful. And that's where I find that we can look forward to what you've written, because it helps us to be more genuine in our communicating, and also more strategic in communication.
I love that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
right. When we talk about this communication, it really is, how do you communicate for lasting impact? We can all say the words, you know, like with any great actor, it's not just the words that are on the manuscript that matter. It's how you deliver that. It's where you deliver that. It's why you deliver that. And all of those things together can create this moment where there is an alignment and where people really buy in and move in ways that are beneficial to themselves, to the organization, right? So communication is, you know, we do take it for granted. We do say, yes, I can speak. My name is X. But there's a difference between saying my name is X and then being able to be memorable for a variety of different reasons. So we talk about all of the different things that go into having impact and influence in your communication and your relationships with others. And we even go into a little bit of the brain science behind it, because as human beings, our brains are wired for stories.
Now, I have to also ask you, ladies, and just preview in the book, something I really didn't quite understand. You speak about organizational scholar. Can you really kind of break down what does that mean, and why is that important?
So I'll take a first crack at that. And I know that Steph has stories to go with this as well. Okay. So one of the first chapter that we go into is how to become an organizational scholar. And there are people that you run across, I think in most organizations, that seem to really have the pulse of the organization. They know the dynamics of not only who's in charge according to the organizational chart, right? But they also know how to get things done and how to navigate and what the history is of the place that you're in and why certain things matter. Being an organizational scholar is really, I think, a very noble pursuit. It's getting that deeper level of understanding about how everything ticks within the organization that you're in. And you can't make assumptions from the outside. You can gather information and prepare yourself. But an organizational scholar is a pursuit of study about your particular group that you're affiliated with. And it takes time. And it takes energy, but the rewards are fantastic, because if you're the person who knows the organization, you know where to go, when there are problems, you know how to seek help, you know the history of how you got to where you are, because every group has its own story, right? There's you know the lore and legends of the organization, right? How did we decide to do this and not that? Why does our brand have these colors and not that colors? There are stories behind all of it. The important part is when you're communicating, right? You've all joined an organization for a purpose, right? It may be for a great job. It may be because you believe in what the organization's doing, but that's something that's going to unite everybody who's in that conversation. So knowing about that thing that unites you, even if there's nothing else that you like about the other people, that you know, kind of can connect with about the other people, if you can connect through the organization and be seen as someone who's knowledgeable and brings something to the table every time about the thing that unites you, that's a step in the right direction. So when we wrote the chapter on becoming an organizational scholar, there was a story that goes with it. And you'll in the book, you'll see that there are lots of different tips and anecdotes and everything. One of the stories that's in there about an organizational scholar is I worked at an organization and there was a person there who said that they were the Yoda of the organization, right? And we're going to like a Star Wars theme here, right?
Okay.
Right? Yoda is a Jedi master who is training the young Jedi, right? And sometimes Yoda speaks in kind of archaic, bizarre language, but ultimately you know that Yoda is this wealth of knowledge about the Force, which is the thing that unites them, right?
Right.
Now, to be an organizational scholar, there are some cautions. So don't go to the dark side of the Force, right? You have to stay along the path of the good. When you're an organizational scholar, that knowledge is power, but you have to use it in appropriate ways that make you that present you as being this resource of good, as opposed to an information hoarder and using that as a weapon. So we go into a lot of the dynamics about that and how to be able to communicate value and not do it in a way that is destructive to yourself, your function, or the organization.
And that's so important, because I think we all know people like that at various organizations, and where you have a person who is that touch-based person. They know everything going on, but they do tend to hoard it. And it doesn't help you or anyone else within the organization when that happens. So again, that communication has to be done precisely so that you can be helpful. You can help your organization to grow and move forward.
Absolutely. And
one thing I'd like to mention is communicators are really tuning into the power of these organizational scholars as well. If any of you are in organizations that use change agent networks or change management networks, where you're getting sort of those people at all levels of the organization who are influential and can help drive transformation and change. I'm seeing this for technology implementations. I mean, you name it. There are these change networks, and it's those folks that, again, they don't hold the highest power in the company on paper, but they are being tapped into for their influence, their knowledge, and it's really fascinating, actually. And at the end of the day, it's really comes down to, to communicate well, you need to be an expert in what you're communicating on, in addition to knowing your audience. And organizational scholars are experts on what they're communicating because they know the organization, the industry, obviously their profession inside and out, and they can bring all of that together in a really powerful way.
Thank you so much, ladies, for highlighting that part. Now, I also have to ask you another question. How do you define the right message, the right time, and right audience? And can you give us some examples maybe, or some stories of how that's differentiated?
Sure, I can kick that one off. This is very much that message we've been talking about knowing your audience. Who are they? What does their workday look like? How are they measured? Folks who are on the front line of a manufacturing plant or out making sales calls, driving around in their car are very different than the folks that maybe are in the corporate office, who I personally tend to think about more because that's who I am. I'm a computer meeting all day kind of person, right? And it can be really easy to forget about those people, what they're measured on, what they care about, how to reach them. They're notoriously hard to reach, those frontline folks, and yet they are the face of your brand in customer service roles or what have you. So the right message, right time, all of that is just really about, again, putting yourself in their shoes. Go study them, go sit with them, observe them, and just think about how you can take what you're going to talk about and make it interesting and relevant to them. So one of my favorite examples of this, I perhaps overuse this, but I really do think this is a good one, is about corporate gifting policies, right? And, the holidays come around and we need to be mindful of how we receive gifts and whether we can give gifts and what the parameters are around that. Like, that's something that in my career, compliance often wants to communicate about. And so an example of that would be, the compliance team might start talking about that in October or in September and thinking about, changes to the policy or whatever the case may be. But please don't communicate about that to your audience in September or October. Like, think about when they start to think about receiving and giving gifts. It's like right after Thanksgiving in the US, for example. And that's a simple, really rudimentary example, but that's even just thinking about that right time aspect. Think about that just-in-time delivery of when your audience needs the information and when they don't. And again, that's going to be different than when we internally as a compliance department are going to be thinking and talking about these things. So just put yourself in their shoes and just think about, and then I would say, we're not always going to get it right because we aren't them, whoever them is. And so that's where two-way feedback is really important. Having mechanisms to collect feedback and input from your audience on whether you hit the mark or not, and then adjusting as needed. Maybe it's, if you got it really wrong, maybe it's about reissuing the communication, and if you didn't, hopefully in most cases it's just maybe about modifying it or updating it or sharing that comment with others and adding on to it as a department or whatever the case may be. But it's that continual feedback loop, so we're constantly learning and being really agile in how we're trying to meet the needs of the people we're communicating to.
That's so important, because what I'm hearing you both ladies say is that there's never really necessary for you to yell, as in raising your voice, yell. You don't need to do that if you're communicating on part. I do appreciate how you talked about having a survey to check back. That's really important, because you can think everyone caught on to what you said, but until you actually ascertain if they got the point, you don't really know. And you could be spinning your wheels and still not getting the answers or the outcome you're looking for because they didn't get it the first time. So I do like how you answered that around the way, that you really don't need to yell in setting up good compliance programs and communicating well. It's all about what you're delivering and how you're delivering if you're picking the right audience. Am I following right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I would also say, not only is it not necessary to raise your voice and yell, it isn't necessary for you to be an extrovert. You don't have to deliver something in a specific style for your communication to have meaning, be respected, and to be a leader. So often, part of the reason that we picked this title is because I was so tired of seeing extroverts, even though I am one, taking up all of the air space and time. I didn't want there to be a perception that in order to be successful in compliance, you had to be the person with jazz hands and screaming, look at me, I'm in the spotlight, can't you see me right now? That, I think, is not a winning strategy. And I think it distracts from the message because you're spending so much time on a personality rather than on the actual message itself. So when we put this together, we specifically talked about the importance of landing the message that compliance and ethics is for everyone. You don't have to be a specific type. You don't have to communicate in a specific way. You need to be able to connect with your audience and be meaningful and relevant to them.
We also talk about just the level of distraction that's unprecedented at this point, with us all getting notifications and texts and pinged, and with a lot more enticing, compelling content, perhaps, right? And so just the need to not only do all the things we've been saying, but just repeat your message. So in communications, we like to say 7 times, 7 ways, because that's what it often takes to break through. And it's not just saying the exact same thing 7 times, 7 ways, because then you're contributing to the noise, but we talk about how to create varied repetition, so that you're trying different channels, different lengths of content, different angles on the same core messaging to try and break through that, because it's just noisier than ever out there. And so that's a big part of this as well.
And let me ask you this question. So far we talked a lot about dealing with everything from international third-party vendors to people that are maybe in investigations, to peers. But now what about C-suite, or should we even say those that are stakeholders? Do you address that as well in the book? How do we communicate with them?
That's all part of how you understand your audience, right? The C-suite is going to be flying at a little bit higher level. They don't want to get down into the weeds. They want to know the broad brushstrokes of how this impacts their strategy, how this impacts the culture within your organization. Whereas someone who is responsible for, a specific P&L wants to know about their business and what this means for their business. So really tailoring communications to those different groups is really all about what we're talking about. Whether it's your board, which is going to want to understand from a fiduciary duty perspective, whether they are meeting the mark in terms of their responsibility to oversee, or it's your frontline person who needs to know some very specific details about what's okay and what's not okay. All of that is part and parcel of how you tailor your message appropriately. And so we talk about that, right? Your stakeholder may not be even within your organization. It may be somebody who was impacted by a data breach. And when you communicate with those people, you have a very different tone and you have different information that needs to be conveyed. You want to convey both what happened and why they should continue to trust you with their data, or whatever the case may be. And Steph and I have dealt with things from the board to external parties and everyone in between. So that is definitely part of what we wanted to convey in this book.
Excellent, excellent. So is there anything else that you want to tell us about the book or about you two before we wrap up for the day? Or
one
we cover
thing
most
I
of
would
it?
add that one thing I would add that might be a bit unique that I don't think we've touched on here is this is actually a workbook. So this is probably equal parts worksheets that we guide people through, in addition to content that we're delivering that's meant to help you operationalize all the things we're talking about here. So whether you have a corporate communications partner internally, or you're in a smaller organization that has no communications resource and you're trying to do this on your own, we are really trying to make this actionable for you and have you be writing all over this thing. So just it's a workbook in addition to a book. I would just want to put that out.
That's awesome, because go ahead, Lisa Beth, you were going to say something?
I was just going to add in, this is really meant to enable your future success, right? What we wanted to do is take some of the information, the tips and tricks, and create a framework that everyone can use, where you don't have to, go and find a communicator. You don't have to go and, hire somebody to help you through this. This is all about you and about what we've found to be successful for us. And I go back through and go through these practices all the time. Every time I have a new client, every time I, had a new, role, etc. It's something that is evergreen and can really be a good resource. And it goes on sale September 13th, We're very, very excited about it. This is the very first time that Steph and I are talking about our book publicly. So thank you for being our first stop on our book tour.
Absolutely. We welcome you here at WEC. We do have 2 side questions regarding the book. Will it be available Audible?
It'll be available on Amazon first. We're going to have both an electronic and a hard copy for people. And I think we'll have to talk to our publisher about whether it'll be available on Audible, but I think that sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, you know, I really foresee this book as something that we can throw into our book bags to have a book discussion. I absolutely love the thought of it, to see a couple of people, you know, going through the work part, of course, the worksheet part of it, and then sitting down and discussing some of their answers, going over it together. Really exciting about that. Very exciting, ladies. Thank you again so much for coming today, sharing that with our global audience. And since this event has been recorded, this is going to be seen in many different countries. So be ready for even an ask, maybe in a different language, for the book to be translated. So be ready for that coming up. Again, we thank all the speakers that we had today. WEC Global is an international compliance and ethics organization that really focuses in on compliance and ethics professionals, attorneys, paralegals, those that are the officers, those that are in the business of the 2C&E. And what we do is we provide a platform for you to come, to get educated, to share, to network, to speak with peers, and to help you to do better in your role, whatever it may be. And even if you're just beginning to become into C&E, we can help you with that as well. I think our website, we can drop that in the chat if you're not a member already. We happen to be open for membership, which is great. Once you're a member, and by the way, we do accept, even though we're a women-based organization, we do accept men and others as friends of WEC. And this is really important because we do realize that we're all in this battle together against crime, against those that are doing the wrong thing. We're in it together. So we do welcome men and males and others to be friends of WEC. And you too can find an application on our website. When you join WEC, you have an opportunity to be a part of the Discord platform, which we invite those to come on and share everything and anything. And again, it's a safe network, a safe environment. You do not have to worry when you're there. We also have a job bank that we're posting international opportunities. We find this phenomenal because you can be here in the United States like I am, but yet looking for another career move, perhaps in the UK, or perhaps in Dubai. So that's an area of opportunity that even if you're not quite ready, or you don't know if you want to make that kind of move, now you can talk to some people who are there, that are doing it, and how does that work for them? So the whole bonding, the friendship that you can grow through WEC is phenomenal. I like to encourage you all, if you haven't already joined WEC or been to our website, please take a moment and visit WEC. In the meantime, again, we thank you. We're going to have another event coming up for the month of August. August 26th is our next event with WEC. And then we have another one on August 31st. So please, please go back onto our LinkedIn page or our Instagram page, where you'll be able to see our events coming up, and soon you'll be able to see them as well on our website, and join us again with WEC. Ladies, Anima, Lisa Beth, Steph, thank you so very much for being with us today. We hope to see you all again soon. Thanks for supporting WEC. Bye.
You.
You're welcome. Bye now.
Goodbye. Thank you.